Be there for the feast tomorrow at Buffalo Wild Wings. Crystal joined PA in charge for nonstop football talk leading up to the Vikings game against the Titans this Sunday, plus great food and drinks and your chance to win great prizes. Doors open at 8 a.m. Get the full details right now at KFAN.com. Keyword calendar.
Hey, welcome back to Trier Rink. It is the Vox in the Box presentation, but from the Trier Rink, the Wild's practice facility. So I guess it's a Paulie from the Perch, the Minnesota Wild, nice enough to let us use Bill Guerin's perch overlooking the perfectly manicured ice before the Wild in Montreal this evening. And joining us here on said perch is Michael Russo. Russo Radio is in the air at Russo Hockey via Twitter. Follow him as 9 to noon does. And let's begin here. Montreal, 4.13 goals per game. That's worst in the NHL. And then you look at Cole Caulfield and you see 12 goals and you see 6 power play goals, which is tied for first in the NHL. So viewing it from afar, not being an elite Montreal Canadiens mind, is this a one-man gang? And when that one man is like off or they shut him down, they lose?
Well, I mean, they haven't been very good. That's for sure. And he definitely is the straw that keeps them. I mean, they got guys like Suzuki, but they've been really disappointing. I mean, I don't think anybody in Montreal expected this. They've got a bunch of veterans there that haven't really done anything. Slavkovsky only has 1 goal. In 13 games, and they just seem to be spinning its wheels. They do have a ton of prospects that are eventually going to be here, but they can light you up. I mean, they showed that the other night in Buffalo, and
7 goals.
Yeah, and so you still gotta be cautious with them because they can skate, but the Wild usually do a really good job. My biggest concern with tonight's game is, even in the locker room yesterday, a lot of guys were talking about Dallas coming up and
right.
wanted to prove something to against that team, because we know that the Wild have been patsies to the Stars for the last several years now, and it does seem like every time the Wild play Dallas in mid-November, it's usually a bad loss, and usually here in Minnesota. So I guess the big thing here tonight is you do have a game before you play Dallas. You got to take care of business because the schedule is really going to start to. The one thing about the Wild schedule is grind as much of a grind as it's been with 10 of the first 15 on the road. Mm-hmm. They've had a lot of days off, and this hasn't been a grind from a fatigue standpoint. And it is going to start to pick up here, the schedule, especially in the month of December. So you got to take care of these teams that should be an automatic 2 points on an every night basis. And they didn't do that the other night in Chicago. It was understandable why. Frankly, if you look at the analytics that night and the way they played in the third period, they should have gotten 2 points. Made a mistake in overtime. Otherwise, they might have gotten 2 points. But you gotta take care of business against these teams below you in the standings.
Well, what does that mean? If you look at the analytics, they should have won the game in the third period.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the game, like the Blackhawks checked hard and they defended hard, but they really created almost nothing. Bedard was completely, like he is a lot of times against the Wild, MIA. And if you look at that game, I mean, the goals saved above the expected by Mrazek, especially in the third period, he should have given up 3 or 4. And the Wild had a ton of scoring chances, outshot them 19-4. So as bad as they were in the first 2 periods, the better the scoring chances were still Minnesota that game by a long shot. And so, that was a game where, frankly, they left it to chance. They got a huge goal from Matt Boldy there in the third period to at least get a point, and probably could have won that game in regulation.
So with the Dallas Stars, going back to that the postseason throttling when Evason was the coach, I mean, it was one-sided, a majority of it. It was just, it's hard to explain. It was just domination for long patches of games. Peter DeBoer. Now he did that. He was with Vegas when Kaprizov played in his first playoff series, right?
Yep.
All right. Well, he took Kirill out of that series, and Kirill's not the first budding superstar to be taken out of a big spot. But now he goes to Dallas, and all of this is happening. So, Peter DeBoer, how much does he have to do with how things are transpiring between the Wild and the Stars.
Well, he's a fantastic coach. Like, I remember for a long time talking to Zach Parisi about just his respect level for DeBoer when he coached him in New Jersey and how good of a coach he is. And he's been a great coach everywhere he's been. Hasn't won that cup yet, but I mean, you look at his Game 7 numbers and they're off the charts. I can't remember if he's even lost a game.
Yeah.
And he's got a great ability to coach, especially in the playoffs. He's very manipulative. You saw that in the press with the way that he turned maybe even the refs into thinking the Wild were the dirtiest team in history. And the Wild took, at 5-on-5, the Wild were right there with the Stars that series. Their special teams is what was garbage that series. Remember, they gave up, I think, 9 penalty kill goals and took a ton of penalties and were getting called on, like, the major on Foligno was not even a penalty, and things like that. So he's a really quality coach. I still think that Kaprizov, he scored the first goal of that series and didn't score again. I still think he was seriously injured from the injury that he had in Winnipeg earlier that March when he messed up his hamstring.
Was that when that guy fell on him?
Yeah,
and
Logan Stanley.
Right?
And I just don't think that. And we saw, I think, even the beginning of last season that it was sort of the same thing. So I still think that Kaprizov, you look at him in his St. Louis series, he's been, that Kaprizov could play in the playoffs. I think that was a one-off.
What do we think of Martin St. Louis, the head coach?
Yeah, I mean, I love him. The guy is a true winner and all that stuff. I think you watch a lot of his press conferences lately, and he is getting frustrated. This is not supposed to be another rebuilding year for the Montreal Canadiens. This was supposed to be a year where they were going to take a significant step. And I don't think he sees that right now. They did get him. I'm not saying that he can't coach, but this is somebody that wasn't, he was a self-taught coach coaching youth hockey. He was not somebody that was ever coached pros and things like that. And we have seen many, many examples of guys that were great hockey players that just couldn't do it in the NHL as a coach. Wayne Gretzky being the chief example of that. So I'm not, I don't exactly know yet what type of coach he is. We don't see Montreal a ton, but clearly this is a huge disappointment so far this season for the Montreal Canadiens, and he is the coach of that team.
So you mentioned analytically that the Wild were in a spot where they really could have taken that game on Sunday against Chicago. What are you seeing analytically or otherwise, just passing the eye test, of a team that is absolutely just jumping people early in games? I mean, the first period for this squad, they are dominating teams and hence putting themselves in spots to win a ton of these games that they have.
Well, they especially do it on the road. I mean, they score first on the road. It's seemingly all the time. And the big thing with that is that they're so much better defensively this year and so much more structured and getting great goaltending that when you do that on the road, you have the ability to sort of, structurally play to the finish line and win those games. At home, they have not been as good. And that's something I do want to see on this homestand is that, their most impressive games, if you're a Wild fan and you're not watching the road games, you might be looking at this team and being like, how are they so good if you've just watched the home games? Because their home games have not been very impressive. Like even the last homestand where they went 2-1, if you look at those games against Toronto and Tampa Bay, they weren't great. They certainly weren't great against Columbus and Seattle to start the year, and those are their 5 home games so far. So I want to see them start. I want to see them do what you just said at home this time.
Okay.
Like Montreal needs to have the life taken out of them in the first period today. They're a rested team. They're feeling good about themselves after scoring 7 goals, but they're still the Montreal Canadiens, a team that usually loses to the Wild. So jump on them right here. Prove to everybody that this is not going to be like this. Should not be just a nail biter tonight to the finish line where you're relying on Gustafsson. So let's see. The Wild are equally as rested. Haven't played since Sunday. They had 2 days off, Monday and Tuesday. Let's see them jump down the throat of a team that shouldn't be on the same playing field as them.
Are you familiar with something called Data Scribe or Data Scribe? Or
Yep.
Okay. Well, here's why I bring it up, and it actually really frustrates me. Okay. Because it's looking for previews of tonight's game. I'm athletic raised, all right, with The Athletic, theathletic.com, one of the very first subscribers. I've gifted athletic stuff to people. I mean, I know what I'm getting when I go to The Athletic.
Right.
And that includes game previews, recaps, or whatever, and it's high end. And with ESPN or ESPN.com, generally speaking, that's what you would come to expect. Certainly the National Football League's going to have beat writers like Kevin Seifert, and they're going to do high-end stuff. Now, the National Hockey League can be a different beast. And here's the point, all right? So I went and I went to ESPN.com to look up some Montreal Canadiens related steam. And so I see a preview there, like Cole Caulfield off 2-goal game at Wild tonight. All right. So then I click on it, and at the bottom it says Associated Press created story using technology provided by DataScribe and data from Sport Radar. Okay, whatever. I've never seen that, but cool. Here's what gets me. If you read the story, the preview, this is ESPN.com, Montreal Canadiens page. Everybody can read it. It has multiple lines like this. Jaden Struble, that's a defenseman for Montreal. Jaden Struble has scored goals over the last 10 games. What are we doing?
Eddie has no goals.
Yeah, but okay, even if he had one, even if he had four, has scored goals over the last 10 games.
It sounds
what in the hell is that?
Yeah, it sounds to me like it's an
lazy.
Aggregated site that is using some horrific AI thing that is wrong.
Right.
It sounds to me.
It's not just there. I looked at some other previews. Do they not have editors?
Yeah,
Copy editors?
a lot of these places don't. And
this is ridiculous.
And I do think that that's the worry right now with AI. It's funny. I have never used AI. But recently, I did throw some sort of question. I was doing a story on the Ottawa Senators on Josh Norris, and I wrote into AI something like, give me the top 5 reasons why the Ottawa Senators missed the playoffs last year, just to sort of remind myself who was hurt and things like that.
Yeah.
And then if I remember in this AI thing that it spit back to me, it said that Drake Batherson, it included him in the number of injuries that they had last year, and I looked and Batherson played 82 games or something.
Yeah.
So I will say it's kind of like writers that now use Wikipedia as a main source, not realizing that it should not be an actual source because
that's a real thing.
Yeah, there are writers out there that I think throws questions into AI and just use it as gospel, and
so I think
that's a perfect reason why I would not ever use it.
So say somebody is doing an elongated radio segment with you for the first time, and they go to Wikipedia and say it's Michael Russo there, and we start in New York, we go to Florida, been here quite some time, Star Tribune, Athletic, the whole thing. But there's a part in it under personal that says Michael was studying to become a brain surgeon before he opted to get into covering the National Hockey League.
That's true, clearly.
Okay, but so something ridiculous. You're saying people will go with things like that blindly.
Yeah. Actually, it's funny because I have a Wikipedia account that's been edited by people, and there's some facts in there that are just not true. There was one thing in there, I haven't looked at it in years, but there was one thing in there that I was a Olympics writer for NHL.com or something, I think, and that's just not true.
Have you ever edited your own page?
No, I don't even know how to do that stuff. I would screw up the I guess coding or whatever. That's the scary thing right now. With there are writers that have been caught using AI to write articles. You know what actually is?
This is ESPN.com.
Yep.
I mean, this is supposedly
that
the
should not.
mothership.
I know that's scary.
That's what I'm saying.
That we don't do that at the Athletic. You know what actually is kind of fun so I use Otter, which is like a transcription. I record on Otter. You definitely can't use it verbatim. You got to go through and edit it, which sometimes takes more time. But you know what they do now on Otter is they give you an AI summary of what the interview was. And so the other day I did a Bill Guerin interview about the Four Nations Cup and USA Hockey, and I just happened to hit that button by mistake.
Wow.
It was dead on. Dead on.
Okay.
So that one is so that one was actually kind of interesting.
Well, again, I mean, I'm at on my phone, but I saw it on my computer this morning. It's the preview for Montreal and Minnesota. Help me with my man's last name. Marat
Kuznetsov.
Okay, Kuznetsov. Okay, so top performers, all right? Kirill Kaprizov has 9 goals and 19 assists for the Wild. Murat Kostadinov has scored goals over the last 10 games.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
He has 0 goals this season.
Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I mean, what is that? Are we talking about practice? Are we doing some pond hockey here? Then it gets into Caulfield has 12 goals and 1 assist for the Canadiens. Jaden Struble has scored goals over the last 10 games.
Yeah, and he, too, has
ridiculous.
That has to be AI generated.
Yeah, but how do you let it go to print,
and
is what I'm saying.
And it has to be, it must be trying to say scored no goals, because both those players have 0 goals.
Right.
So.
Okay, let's has scored goals. Okay, yeah, it should be no. But, again, I guess cost-cutting measures were just hit and send, and it's getting right out there to millions.
I don't know when they do it, but probably the best place to look for previews for games would be
I know where to go.
Yeah.
No, I know where to go. I go athletic, NHL.com.
Yeah.
I'll use TSN occasionally for a Vox in the Box. Oh, I'm sorry. I went to ESPN.com and an FS1 broadcast broke out. It's
clearly a cost-cutting thing. They don't have writers for every team. They only have a couple writers for all of ESPN. Emily Kaplan and Kristen up in Toronto and Greg Wyshynski, and they're not doing those type of things. So clearly it's farmed out to some sort of AI-generated something that's clearly wrong.
Well, it's weird, though, because whether it's ChatGPT, if you're using a search engine, for instance, I use Brave. It has an AI assistant that tries to tell you the story.
Yeah.
And it's always off. It's always incorrect. A lot of these things are still ultimately captive to what you feed into it, right?
Yeah.
How it's programmed, who's doing the programming.
But that's what I mean. Like, I did this thing with Bill Guerin the other day where we talked about the 4 nations, and I almost should call it up and read you the summary of our interview. It's dead on. It's a reporter talking to a executive for USA Hockey about wanting to be battle tested and this and that, and it actually was a perfect summary of what the interview was about.
All right, over our next
sometimes it's good, I guess.
5, 6, or 7 minutes. Help us with this, Michael Russo at Russo Hockey. You wrote about Boldy sitting on superstardom. What leads you to that conclusion?
I think he has the ability to be a star in this league. He's starting to play more and more consistently,
and he has scored goals over the last 10 games.
Yeah, he has 7 goals. He has scored 7 goals over the last 11 games.
Yeah, nice job, guys.
And 4 of those game winners, 1 game tying. And what I loved about him the other night is that every single shift he was out there trying to be the difference maker. And even the shift right before he scored the big goal, he cuts himself to the middle on an individual play, hits crossbar post. Puck was actually just sitting there for Kaprizov to put it in, and Mrazek made a great play to just shovel it out of harm's way. But he just, that to me is what I'm seeing now, is when the game's on the line, he wants to be the guy. And he would have a lot more points right now if that left wing on that line could bury a puck. Marcus right now has 1 goal, 0 assists in his last 13 games, and I figured that out myself. That's not from AI. So I mean, if you had a left wing on the second line that could actually get a point every now and then, it probably would help. So I just think that Boldy right now is trying to become the guy. We heard going into this offseason that it started in the World Championship where he led the tournament in scoring, but then all offseason he spent it here, barely went back to Massachusetts, was here every single day working with their strength coach, with their skating coach, and everybody said coming in that he looked different. We didn't see it in camp because he broke his toe on day 1 of camp, basically, and missed it 2.5 weeks. But then right from the start of the season, right from that first game, he's been excellent. And so that's what I think is that, especially at $7 million, which in today's day and age is undervalued.
Yeah.
If they can get, as I wrote sort of tongue-in-cheek the other day, there's no rule in this league against having 2 superstars, and we see that with Draisaitl and McDavid. We saw that for years in Chicago. We've seen that forever in Pittsburgh. It doesn't have to be just Kaprizov. And if Boldy, especially on a second line here, could, take a lot of pressure off Kaprizov, it's only going to make the team better, where you just don't always have to rely on Kaprizov being the one that drives his team. And so, he's not a superstar yet by any stretch.
Right.
But right now he's on the pace for 49 goals and I think 84 points. And, if he has that type of year, it's only going to look tremendous for him. He just seems to want to be a stud right now, and that's a good thing.
You referenced it earlier. I read it this morning. The chat with Bill Guerin about the U.S. 4 national squad and some tough decisions. Cole Caulfield, who plays against the Wild this evening, what was mentioned in the story. Now the squad and the decisions, for those who may have missed the story, what was it about?
Yeah, I mean, Bill Guerin's the GM of the 4 Nations team and the 26 Olympics. This team is really strict with the number of players you can have there because the NHLPA wants these guys to be able to go on vacation during their 12-day break, essentially.
Yep.
And doesn't want guys just going to Montreal and Boston and not playing. So really, I mean, you only get one extra forward, one extra defenseman, and one extra goalie. And so they're trying to build a team, not an all-star team. And so, you know, there might be a lot of perplexed people on December 4th when this team is announced. And all of a sudden you don't see a Cole Caulfield or a Tage Thompson on the team, a Clayton Keller, a Brock Besser, players like that. You know, I think the majority of the decisions have been made. I mean, obviously the Jack Hughes, the Kachuk brothers, McAvoy, Austin Matthews. I think Faber and Boldy are essentially locks right now. But then they want role players and players that they can plug into situations that are versatile. So, like, you know, Vincent Trocheck and Brock Nelson might not be as good or talented of players as, say, a Tage Thompson or a Cole Caulfield, but there's going to be, you know, a real good chance that those guys make the team even over those two players because they want, you know, all these guys could play the power play. What they want are penalty killers, players that can play any style, that can play wing and center and things like that. A guy like Boldy can play left wing, right wing. Heck, we saw on the tying goal in Chicago the other day that he was playing center on that line with Kaprizov and Zuccarello. So he could play different areas. So Tage is the one guy that I think is on the outside of looking in that I'm a little perplexed by just because he's enormous. I mean,
he's
the guy,
still with Buffalo, right?
I mean, yeah, you put him on skates, he's like 6'9", and he's an excellent penalty killer. But they got huge size already up front, and the question is where are you going to play him? If you have a bunch of centers that are guys like Austin Matthews, Jack Eichel, maybe Trocheck, Larkin, Brock Nelson. So I think that's the big thing. But I'm a huge fan of Tage. I could see where Caulfield maybe is a little bit redundant if you're looking at the Jack Hugheses and the Boldies and the Jake Gensels and players like that. But Tage is the one that I think I'd keep an eye on, and maybe they change their mind on him.
Last one, my brother. The Jets, 15-1 start. First in the history of the National Hockey League to win 15 of the first 16 games. I mean, the Wild's first overtime loss, they went tooth and nail against these Jets. What's propelling the Jets to be so good?
Well, one, they're getting incredible goaltending for Hellebuck. Morrissey's been unreal. Scheifele's been unreal. Guys like Ehlers has been great. Kyle Connor is an absolute star. I didn't even mention him on the USA Hockey. I mean, he's a shoo-in. But then they got guys like Nino and Adam Lowry and Neil Pionk that they've just got a lot of depth up and down their lineup. You know, they were really good last year. They just melted down in the playoffs because Hellebuck wasn't very good after a Vezina Trophy win. So a lot like here in Minnesota where fans are like, it's cute that the Wild are playing well right now. Wake me up in the playoffs when they get by around. I think that there's a lot of cynicism up in Winnipeg country as good as they're playing. That like, all right, let's see Hellebuck in the playoffs because he was as good as he was now last year when he won the Vezina Trophy. So I watched them the other night against the Rangers and they were outstanding. Zibanejad was just brutal that game. Turned the puck over before all 3 goals. And I don't know what's going on with him in New York. Shesterkin wasn't very good, but Winnipeg walked in there, scored on their first shift by Scheifele, and just from that point on, I thought they controlled the game. And so that's a tough building to play in against a great Eastern Conference team, a heck of a measuring test, and the Winnipeg Jets looked as good as they have. So, yeah, the Wild played, they could have easily had won that game if not for that last second 6-on-5 goal at the end of the first period where they pulled the goalie and Scheifele scored and the Wild just weren't in the shooting lane. Frankly, the Wild could have one of those wins this year against them, but they've only lost once to Toronto and they just seem to be nothing stopping them right now.
Good seeing you and good work as usual.
Yep, anytime. See you, PA.
Appreciate you. That's Michael Russo at Russo Hockey, covers the Wild, writes about the NHL for The Athletic and theathletic.com. When we return, radio analyst Tom Reid joins 9 to noon. But first, here comes Max.
The Fan and two men in a junk truck want to give you a shot to put $1,000 in your hand with our national cash contest. Enter the keyword BILLS at KFAN.com now for your shot at winning. That's keyword BILLS. Enter it now at KFAN.com. Head over to KFAN.com and make the keyword contest to enter for a chance to win a Papa Murphy's family meal deal, including a family-sized pepperoni pizza, cookie dough, and classic cheesy bread. That's KFAN.com, keyword contest to enter.
Mr. Tom Reid, analyst for the vast and ever-expanding Wild Radio Network. How have you been, my friend?
Been good. So much more fun this year than it was last year, as you know,
yeah.
PA. And the thing is, winning, you just look at the number of players on the ice for the optional skate this morning. You know, I said before that, when you win, everybody wants to be on the ice. They want to get to the rink. They want to have a lot of fun with it. But when you're losing, you want to stay as far away from the rink as you possibly can. But this team has been very good all season long.
And you would know better than anybody, because not only have you played, but you've done this job for a long time. In an 82-game piece, that goes in patches, right? Where, what's the team now? 10-2-3, something, or 10-3-2, one of the two. Things are good, and things can get a little peppy, despite the Blackhawks loss the other night. But we brought it up with John Hines, the coach of the team, 90 minutes ago. It is in a physical game like this, it goes in patches, where the leadership and the coach just has to be on top of tendencies. And hey, TR used to get to every meeting 10 minutes early. Now he's rolling in right at the buzzer. He's a little tired and lackadaisical during the skate. Pull him to the side and talk about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's interesting too, because in Chicago, I said before the game that this is the game that scares me. This is the game that scares me, because you take them
end of a road trip.
End of a road trip. You take them a little bit lightly, because they're not a very good team this year, and we've all read the accolades of Minnesota, how good they have been this year. Chicago, not so. But Chicago had a great crowd. I was surprised that it looked like most of the seats were filled, and they've had their moments where it has not been that good. But it's a great building, and the fans got behind them, and they just, they won the contest. It was a close game. Minnesota came out the first two periods, didn't have a lot of gas in the tank, but they came on that third period and played really well, had a chance, but they got at least 1 point. But this is a team that really is not afraid to step on the ice and make some good things happen. And, regardless of who they're playing, and even tonight going against Montreal, an old established club going back in the 20s when it first came in. It's fun to have a team like that. The old school, the old six original teams coming in is great. So this should be good, but they better be ready.
I should have this in front of me. I don't, and I apologize if I make a mistake. When did you play for Montreal?
I played for Chicago.
Oh, you played for Chicago.
Yeah,
okay.
I broke in with the Blackhawks in 67, 69.
Yeah, but you've told some stories about 9 to Noon about the Montreal Forum, which is now Bell Center, and I brought it up a little bit with Kevin Gorg. Just, whether the team, and same thing with the Blackhawks, United Center, whether the team's good or bad, when you get to places like that, you just kind of feel the Guy Lafleur, Ken Dryden hockey immortality, don't you?
Yeah, you do. And, growing up in Canada, in a border town, Fort Erie, Ontario, my favorite team was the Montreal Canadiens, and Mr. Beliveau was my favorite player.
Wow.
I always addressed him, even on the ice, Mr. Beliveau was always that. He just carried himself with such a feeling of accomplishment and stature, and you just loved to be around him. And one of the first games I played in the NHL was against Montreal, and he became a one-on-one. He's coming down to me, and I'm thinking, as a kid, are you kidding me? This he can't write this script. Yeah. He came down, he threw a head fake at me, and I went that way, and he went the other way. Yeah. He didn't score, but he got around. I learned my lesson in a hurry, but what a wonderful building that was, the Forum was. So look at the Maple Leaf Gardens, Boston Gardens.
Right.
I played in the original Madison Square Garden. That was my first game back in 1967.
So this is not the original? Like where you take escalators up 13 floors to get to an ice rink or a basketball court?
They opened up in 19, I'm trying to think, 19, I think it was...
The original garden?
Yeah. 68 is when they opened. They opened January of 1968. My date's set. Yeah.
All right. Well, if you came into that Blackhawks game telling Joe O'Donnell or Fallness in the pregame or whomever, maybe you're talking to somebody on the side, what you just said here is this is a tricky one, because they're not very good, and granted it's on the road, but if that's the case with them, I mean, it's fair to say Montreal is either might be worse or is worse. They're second worst in the NHL in points differential.
Yeah, 31st.
Right. Now they got Caulfield with 12 goals and tied for the NHL lead for power play goals, but the Blackhawks have Bedard, who still is a work in progress. What do you think about tonight? Any concerns?
Well, there's always concerns how you're going to step into it, but I think, there's a lesson that's learned in the different games you play, and I think the lesson was evident the other night at Chicago when they got beat. They took them maybe a little more lightly, and I don't really want to say they took them lightly. I really think that the guys were gassed. They had so much travel time, and they had 3 games in 4 nights. It's just one of those situations when they stepped into it, all of a sudden you got travel, and even the day off, they had to get up in the morning, get at the airport, and then fly. Didn't get to the hotel till like 6 o'clock at night. By the time you get there, it's a long day, and you're logging, and you're tired, and then you got to get to bed and try and get enough rest. But I think guys were just tired. But I think they've re-energized themselves over the last couple of days. Doesn't take much to get them back to the point they want to be at.
Tom Reid, Analyst, Wild Radio Network on KFAN this evening with Joe O'Donnell at 7 o'clock.
Can't you take the other side of that, Tom, as well, though, thinking about the first 15 games of this season, where it's also really impressive how they handled and were able to win so many of a very road-heavy early schedule. And it's kind of daunting when you look at that thing when it comes out. How are you going to get through this thing? And for the most part, I think they handled it beautifully, really save for that finale in Chicago on Sunday.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think it started in training camp. I think with John Hines and his staff, the work ethic was certainly evident by the players. You'll watch them in the board battles and everything else. And he told them it's going to be a hard camp. And they weren't very happy, I'm sure, some of the guys. But you know what? They got into it. They adjusted to it. They put their arms around it. And as a result of that, that's why they're off to such a great start. And when you look at Winnipeg, who would expect that from Winnipeg?
It's crazy.
But they've been great, but Minnesota really has played well. I mean, when you look at the number of games that they have played and what they have done on the road as well as at home, very few home games. We'll get our stretch here coming up eventually, but we got these 2 home games, then we're back on the road again for another 3. So we have a lot of that road weariness will be taken away very quickly.
It's and I brought this up earlier, but it's and I'm wrong here, okay, but I can't figure it out. It astounds me in the game of hockey, which is so tightly contested. And like I said to KG earlier, all right, Winnipeg winning 15 of the first 16. There are more than a handful of those games that really were meat grinders with 1.5 minutes, 2.5 to go. So we're talking puck luck. We're talking the injuries working out and everything. At the timing of things. And Hellebuck was good last year, and I know he's been unbelievable this year. But the Wild has beaten Montreal 16 of the last 17 times, including like 8 in a row. And all right, I'm not looking back. Is it Le Bleu Bon Rouge? I'm not hearkening to those days. And I know they only play them twice a year. That even makes it more magnified that they're beating them every single time in a game that is so physical, so tightly contested. Injuries are so prevalent. 16 of 17 times.
Yeah, but you look at the league and it's like a big wheel. When things are going well, you're at the top of the wheel, and then things start to your guys get a little bit older. Trades the expectation of the players, what you're expecting isn't there, and all of a sudden the wheel is starting to go down a little bit. It's how quickly you can get to the bottom and come back up again.
Yeah,
in the rebuild.
I don't want to be at the bottom of the wheel, no. Tommy. That means I'm getting rolled on.
That's exactly right. But you want, the depth of the franchise is so important. What you have down there, and I look at the kids down in Iowa right now. I mean, they want to be up here. Mm-hmm. Every one of these guys, someone's fighting for their job. They want to elevate themselves. The guys in the top line, they're pretty well set. We know that.
Yeah.
The guys who are on the third line want to be in the second line. The guys in the second want to be in the first, and that's just how it works. And the same thing in the pairing and defense. But you're rewarded by how you perform on the ice, what you bring to the table each and every day.
Any surprise at all? 15 into it, the goalie cut has gone bus 11, flower 4.
It surprised me how well this team has got off to the start this year. I didn't expect that. Having Spurgeon back certainly helps the leadership role back there. Mm-hmm. Having Foligno, who's fairly healthy, still going through the effects of having the surgery in the off season. But these guys really have put their arms around each other. And when you come to these practices, and not on game day, but at the end of the night, or end of the day, there's Kaprizov and Zuccarello still on the ice, half an hour after practice, doing little things together, having fun with it, having a little contest. And you can see that they know exactly where each other is going to be on the ice. You don't have to see them, but they can sense it. For some reason, they know exactly where they are.
Yeah.
And both of them are able to make those plays. And, of course, Kaprizov, as good as he is, got a great guy with him in Zuccarello.
But with the goaltenders, if into the season, I had told you, hey, 15 into it, Gustafson's going to have played 11, and the Hall of Famer only 4, would that have surprised you at all?
No, I expected Gus, if he has the year we saw like 2 years ago, if he had the year like he had last year, he wouldn't be playing near as much. But he's stepped up here. He said he was going to step up, and he's done that. And they've got a young kid, Falstad, down in the minors, waiting to have his turn, too. And he'll get it eventually. I look at Flower. He's going to be 40 years old in a few days. So, and great, but he plays like a 20-year-old. He has so much fun. And he's a guy that is kind of a glue. He brings joy into that locker room.
Yeah.
Hey, you mentioned it's Kaprizov and Zuccarello working together and creating that chemistry, and it's showing up on the ice. Love that. What about Boldy? And we've talked about Matt Boldy a couple of times this show, and Russo, who was just sitting down with us and via The Athletic, kind of getting into that superstar terminology, that there's potentially a future of him being the ultimate high-ender. The value of him, his start this season, what have you loved about it?
Just the way he plays. He's a horse out there every game, and he is such a deceptive player, too. He's a big guy. You don't expect him to have the moves that he has, but he has a confidence. And this is such a game of confidence. It's a confidence in a power play. You have confidence on your PK, and when they're working, everything is great. But for a player, goaltender, forward, defense, confidence is so important part of how well you're going to have your games you play all season long. This is when you start to lose, your confidence wanes a little bit. It goes down, and you're hoping that it's going to come back. And I think winning brings everything to the table. I mean, you win, and look at the number of guys on the ice here today. It's an optional practice.
Yeah.
They're having fun. They have confidence in each other. They're having a great time.
Kaprizov and Boldy are at the optional. I think I saw Boldy. I know I've seen Kaprizov.
Boldy was out here in street clothes 20 minutes before anyone else showed up taking shots.
Yeah, and Kaprizov, we just watched him, or while you guys were talking, I watched him practice. It's because it takes a while to do this. 3 times, charging the net, going to his knees, and shooting from his knees.
Yeah.
Just like wow, where'd that? I mean, I've seen that in games happen a million times, yes, but I didn't realize you practice things like that.
Well, they do. We did
shooting from your knees.
In our day, we didn't. I mean, the game was so much slower back in the 60s and 70s when I played. But boy, these guys work so hard. They're in great shape 12 months of the year. We never had summer ice or stuff like that. We didn't have people helping us with our training techniques and nutrition experts, and we didn't have that. But it's developed into a situation that this is really a 12-month job now, and these guys work really hard. And nothing beats winning. And when you win, the cup is the ultimate goal that you're going for. And I've always said, it's getting in the playoffs. Get to the playoffs, then you see where it goes. Look at St. Louis a couple of years ago. They were dead last in the NHL January the 2nd. They wound up getting in the playoffs and winning the Stanley Cup because things started to fall into place for them.
Isn't that an amazing thing where when a team's going well, when everything's going well, they want to show up early. They want to do the extra reps, and then when a team's not doing so well, they have to fight the mentality to do those simple things, those harder things, or in some cases just get those extra reps in. That momentum kind of carries you through mentally.
Well, that's why I said, this is a game of confidence. When you're confident in your game and you're playing well, you're having fun with it, and that's why these guys are out here right now because they feel it's going to be a tough game tonight. It's Montreal. We'll have a lot of Montreal fans coming down to the Twin Cities. We know that. But at the same time, there's work to be done, and they better be ready once the puck drops.
You, my friend, are terrific, and we'll be listening to the game tonight. Thank you.
All right, thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Tommy Reid. Don't forget about Tom Reid's on West 7th as you're heading to the Minnesota Wild game. West 7th or Kellogg?
West 7th.
Yeah, West 7th.
Yep.
Stop by. I'm sure they have some wonderful festivities transpiring. Alex Stalock, former goalie for the Minnesota Wild, joins us about 15 minutes from now. And with Nordo, yours truly, Paul Allen, here. It's Paulie on the perch from General Manager Bill Guerin's perch, overlooking the waning stages of the Minnesota Wild optional morning skate. And Box in the Box, Paulie on the perch, returns after this.
Dreaming of a win winter getaway, head over to our contest page and enter for your chance to win a trip for 2 to Ballard's Resort, including lodging for 2 days of angling and meals, all thanks to Mom's Landscaping and Design. That's KFAN.com. Keyword contest to enter today.
Let's mix in some news du Nord from Trier Rink. The Minnesota Wild skate is basically over, and we still do have Kirill Kaprizov out there with beloved Zuki getting ready for tonight, and Cole Caulfield and these Montreal Canadiens. And that's on the Fan at 7 o'clock tonight. The Minnesota Timberwolves, as news du Nord would go. That's going to be an A topic, undoubtedly. But this being Thursday, and this still being National Football League season, it's a big day for the old con.
Yeah, I believe it is. Thank you to the casino at Canterbury Park for providing news du Nord on a daily basis. And it is about poker, blackjack, and table games. Those are some A topics in the card casino. We love the casino at Canterbury Park. But the NFL Pick'em game is taking the world by storm, and it's open now. It opened at 10 a.m. You head on into Canterbury and Shakopee.
Here they come.
And frankly, I mean, have a sip of chips if you're so inclined to.
Yep.
You know, maybe you work early morning hours and you're already done for the day. You get your free MVP card, and you just simply make picks on the NFL weekend games. And ultimately, if you're the best of the bunch, you're going to win hundreds of dollars simply by knowing who's going to win and potentially why. So it's free to play.
Yeah.
Get the free MVP card, and hopefully you get paid off, and then you can feel the felt while you're there.
All right, now, I did not watch the Timberwolves game last night. I went to bed early, and I watched the entire game the night before with Finchy on the radio show yesterday. And I meant what I said to Chris Finch yesterday, because I think, you know, I have a handle on when two teams play each other for the same time within, say, 3 days, 5 days, or a week, let alone back-to-back.
Right.
A lot of things change. Like, for instance, the Timberwolves crushed Portland on Friday night, beat them by 25. All right, you come back and you play Tuesday at Rose Garden, and you get beat. We have Finchy on, got another game that last night, and I'm like, well, you're going to win tonight, but blah, 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 blah. Holy cow. I mean, I didn't watch the game. Was it like, I know you watched it, did you ever think the Wolves were going to win, or was it one of those bits where like, okay, wow, I mean, something is off with this squad right now.
Yeah, there was a little run in the third quarter. Ultimately, it was tied into the fourth. So you're thinking Wolves make a little run into the third. They're finally going to wake up. I mean, Rudy wasn't good enough, you know, and maybe part of that's the back-to-back. And Anthony Edwards has, you know, I hate to say he's getting a ton of minutes. Is he maybe not providing that oomph on defense that he's so accustomed to?
Wow.
No Conley in the mix, so you're getting a lot of Nikhil Alexander-Walker last night.
So we're sitting Conley on a back-to-back.
Yeah, I believe that was
okay.
rest related, yeah.
Got it.
And so he didn't play last night. You're settling for a ton of threes. You're watching a team that actually, with a 4-time Defensive Player of the Year, was getting absolutely worked and dominated inside. And Donovan Clingan, the rookie, I was talking to you about him off air, LFL reasons.
Well, and Robert Williams, the guy I joked about yesterday with Finch, where I'm like, the demise of Robert Williams has been greatly exaggerated. The guy plays like 10 games every couple of years for the state of hockey, and those who don't follow it and are not league freak raised. Robert Williams, when he was with the Boston Celtics, this was a 5-block-a-game guy who would give you 16 rebounds.
Oh, yeah.
And if he wasn't getting the rebound or blocking the shot, he was changing everything in the paint.
In like 19
young
minutes, by the way.
Young
that was
Alex,
the key with Robert Williams, too. He's a 19-minute 4 or 5 block type of game.
But see,
guy.
Williams has had some debilitating injuries the last 2 or 3 years. He never plays. Well, they dusted him off the other night, and he changed the game. Looking at the box score, he didn't play last night because it's a back-to-back. So now you got this UConn rookie Clingan. and you got whatever else they throw out there in the middle, and they don't really have much.
No, because there's been no Simon. Simons isn't a big guy, but no DeAndre Ayton in the mix either game either.
And Simons didn't play last night, did he?
He played in neither of the games.
Oh, geez.
So that's
what about Shadon Sharp? He's super talented. Did he have a good game?
Yeah, I'd have to go box score.
Don't even worry about it.
Specifically, well, there you go. I'm hearing down the line from Max that Sharp may have had a 30-plus point game last night.
Max, you watched the full game?
Yes, sir, I did.
Did Shadon get off? He's super gifted.
Yeah, he started to really go off towards the end. He had 33 points and 6 rebounds. He was undoubtedly the star of the show for the Blazers last night, and the Wolves really had no real answer for him.
Yeah, and I mean, we're trying to sweat Jeremy Grant, but we obviously are going to get through this thing, and it's a disaster. This team, I don't believe, lost 3 games in a row until the playoffs last year, and now they've lost a game without Jimmy at Target Center. They've lost to a heavily undermanned Blazers team 2 nights in a row. And, it doesn't necessarily get much easier as they head to Sacramento tomorrow night to take on a team that, frankly, they don't match up well with DeMontis, and they got De'Aaron Fox, and now they have, why am I losing it? Former
DeMar DeRozan.
There we go. They got DeRozan now. They're trying to cook. I mean, it's real ugly. And I've seen people putting this out there, and it's difficult for me to lay this at their feet so far. But there's a lack of spark and motivation I'm seeing people putting on this team right now.
Yeah.
We knew the early stages were going to be a grind. Probably just shouldn't be as bad as it's been, specifically in the last 3.
Well, I mean, there's a reason each time Chris and I chat on the radio, I bring up to him, do they think they're push button?
Yeah.
I mean, they went to the Western Conference Finals last year, and Ant's getting all this, that, and the other. We got Netflix and just the whole thing. I mean, do they, and by the way, it's not the same team. You got a guy off the bench who all of a sudden can't shoot, Dante DiVincenzo, and his minutes continue to decrease.
He may have been like 1 of 12 last night.
Wow.
And Ant was 0 of 9 from deep.
And DiVincenzo will shoot out of that, but this is not, you can't, if you're a fool, anybody who was on this team last year, you are fools if you think you can push the button with a new group and you're like anointed to just get there.
Yeah.
And that should have been eye-opening when Dallas beat them a couple of weeks ago. I mean, because Dallas is cream of the crop in this conference, in my opinion. But it's not the same team, but the optics are just bad here. The optics are getting worse.
Yeah.
Because like when Julius Randle plays defense and things don't go the right way, it doesn't look great. Okay, I can offset that by saying, guess what? Karl Anthony Towns is one of the worst shot-blocking 7-footers I've ever seen in my life. He doesn't really even try. Now, granted, he's out on the perimeter. But I bring up the name Karl Anthony Towns and the optics because Cat's killing it.
He's cooking in New York
he
right
is absolutely playing as well as I've ever seen him play in his career. He's happy. He's tenacious.
But I bet they would be saying similar things because I think they're around 500 too.
They got beat last night.
I think they are, and it was a nail-biter at the end, I believe.
Brunson missed a game winner.
They're sweating kind of the chemistry and working it in, right? They're trying to get all the Villanova cats with Paul Bridges into the mix.
But that's not going to matter as the context or lack thereof goes with social media.
Well, that's
because they're going to
true.
see the box score and see 46-15, 3 steals, 2 blocks, 70% shooting, 5 threes hit, and they're going to be like, great trade.
Hey,
look at us now.
Is this a dumb opinion that Kyle Anderson in some of these spots from a ball handling, chill, just getting slow-mo, do you miss a guy like that at all?
I mean, it's a good point because, it plays into if you think, this with all due respect, Edwards, Gobert, McDaniels, the ones who play the most, who played last year.
Yeah.
And you know what they can do. And I really like what you said about Edwards' defense or lack thereof. Anthony Edwards' perimeter defense, the final part of the season and during the postseason, was unbelievable.
Yep.
Okay, well, I guess I haven't watched it critically or closely enough to know if it's up or if it's down. But nevertheless, they're a middling team. But as you move forward, the lack of context with those who will opine on the team. Not that it matters to the coach. The players will say it doesn't matter, but they see every single thing. They hear every single thing. Because if they don't, family members tell them. And I'm not kidding you. That can derail things. I've seen it with certain football teams. So the context is going to be they're not going to look at, the Knicks with OG Anunoby and Brunson and Cat and Mitchell. Hey, Mitchell Robinson's not playing. Wait till he gets back. Hartenstein got traded. No, none of that matters. it's the box score. It's, well, look at the game logs for Cat.
Yeah.
And look at what I'm seeing here with lack of cohesion with slow-mo. The last time, like I looked at his game logs, I mean, he's playing like 7 minutes, 7, 8, 9. I don't know if he's hurt, if he doesn't fit in.
Well, it's weird, too. They gave him 3 and 27. So
okay.
You're spending $9 million a year for a guy.
There's got to be something to it.
Correct,
then.
Yeah.
However, with the glue and the cohesiveness that you're talking about here, he was part of it.
I think he was.
He was a glue, Okay, cool. Nice box score, man. 1 of 5. Let's say you had 4 points after going to the line, 7 rebounds, 2 steals, and you played 22 minutes. Oh, yeah? Well, it worked. and whatever he filled in, whether it's subbing for Rudy because he could play some center, he could play all the positions. It was working.
Right.
It worked, and something is not working right now, man.
So they got to figure it out. Friday Night Lights, they're in Sacramento, and that's going to be an ugly one, too. So they've fallen to 500, 3 in a row, as I mentioned, on the bad side of things. They don't want to make it 4.
Wow.
I would anticipate, after a chill day today, I see a better team, even though, I mean, it's an infinitely more difficult matchup on paper. I think they'll be better tomorrow night.
Well, because of Vikings road travel, I haven't seen, I didn't see the Heat game. I didn't watch last night. That was my choice. I haven't seen as much as I would have liked to make bold proclamations or statements every single time. I haven't seen him one time this year look like last year. Not one time.
By the way, because Spoelstra is one of the great coaches of the last 30 years, and Eric Spoelstra, head coach of the Heat. I was kind of lionizing him for good reason because of his inbounds play. And just he's so savvy.
I think I know where you're going here.
Did you see the other night when he called a timeout?
I was watching it live. Okay, and you should have seen the look on his face when the assistant came over and whispered in his ear, "We don't have any more timeouts," and it lost the game. Okay, now
technical free throw.
It was to the Pistons. Okay, so it's at Detroit. Cade Cunningham, as people would say, was on one that night.
Yeah,
very entertaining game. No Jimmy. Tyler Hero was doing his thing. It was a fun game to watch, and the Pistons, by the way, got a little something going right now. But it's before that. I thought of you too because I didn't see that inbounds play you were talking about. I think it was to Jovic where Alexander Walker got lost.
It was Jovic.
Okay.
And Nikhil fouled him.
Okay. Well, yeah. I saw like a gotcha out of bounds from Spoelstra against the Wolves. I'm like, okay, let's move on. Well, what was interesting was in that game, before Spoelstra went Chris Webber on it and called a timeout that they didn't have, J.B. Bickerstaff, coach of the Detroit Pistons, ran a gotcha inbounds play against the Heat that was a lob to Duran, the center, and he won the game.
Oh, that's the that's the play, and then Spoelstra rolls out. He's shaking his head, calls the timeout.
Bam Adebayo could not have been any more lost on that play with the back pick. It was an easy alley-oop. Oh, not just some side-out, inbound alley-oop period. Yeah. No, to win the game.
Oh, my
They won the game against Spo. So, I mean, you get some, and I guess you give some away.
Last thing here is we've kind of stretched NDN to the 12.
Yeah, we got the goal. We have the analyst goalie coming up here shortly.
We got the goaltender. He's looking fresh. The whole thing.
We have Simon's dad.
Oh, this is perfect. We do have NFC East.
What are you talking about?
We do have NFC East tonight. It is Philly.
How about that?
4-point favorites hosting Jaden Daniels and the Commanders.
Yep.
That's going to be a badass game, man. Eagles have kind of come to life again. They're getting healthy and all of that. A.J. Brown being a factor, and Saquon and his spin moves and his backwards hurdles.
That's a good one.
But the Commanders still smarting, I would imagine, from that loss to Pittsburgh. It's going to be a fun one Thursday Night Football.
Yeah, and with Staylock on the horizon, not too much on this. Tonight is going to begin one of two things for Jaden Daniels and the Washington Commanders. They're either going to have 4 things exposed tonight by that. It's at Lincoln Financial, right?
It is, yeah.
They're either going to have 3, 4, or 5 things exposed tonight with which they haven't had to deal all year, and they're going to lose by double digits, or they're going to fight them tooth and nail to the wire, beat them, or just be that team that's like, wow, man, we lost 28-27.
Yeah.
But you know what? We can roll with these guys, and then they're going to be tough the rest of the way or in the post. I'm not saying they wouldn't be tough if they get blown out. I haven't looked at their schedule. I'm still moderately surprised with a lot of this personnel they have. that they have the record they do and they're doing what they're doing. Rubber meets the road tonight for the old Washingtonians.
That's a good way to put it. It's their first. This is a real class test tonight.
Yep,
for
perfectly stated.
That's news to Nord.
And into the final hour, Alex Stalock, former goaltender for the Minnesota Wild, will join us to chat about myriad things. And that's all around the corner at FM 100.3 KFAN.